risk we built for ourselves with the Littoral Combat Ship was 2 new types of ships we had not built before, systems that we did not currently have into the mission modules, and modularity in a way that we hadn't done before. And we took all of that newness, stacked it on top of itself, and it collapsed under its own weight. And so now we're going through a lot of work to add permanent systems to the littoral combat ships to ensure that our fleet commanders have the small surface combatants that they do need. What we're doing differently right now is essentially taking systems that already exist. And my requirement for those vendors or someone who wants to work with us for a containerized payload is that they make that system fit into an ISO container, a 20-foot or 40-foot container. And it will have a standard interface for input power from the host vessel, cooling water from the host vessel, and a data interface with the host vessel. And if they can do that with a system that already exists, then we will have a containerized capability. And then, as more capability comes online as we move into the future, then we will continue with the ability to add more containerized capability to our MUSVs and other ships.
All right, let me switch topics. This may be the thing I'm most interested in, and I suspect it's something that the chair will be interested in. I know the committee will be too. Armed Services 10 years ago, according to my institutional memory, Creighton Green, adopted the 355 ship requirement. And we have some sub requirements, like 11 carriers and 30 amphibs. But I think most of us, and this came up in the hearing this morning, the 355, most of us are interested in the lethality and capacity more than just the number of ships. I mean, I think some are really interested in the number. We know we don't have enough now. We know we have to grow, but it's really a measure of your capacity and lethality that we're trying to get at. And I'm not an expert at this. You got a Navy officer here who knows more than me. But that criteria was developed before you were really seeing the acceleration of these uncrewed platforms. And so, 355 ships, we have carriers that have a 50-year center with a 25-year refueling. But you were talking about an uncrewed system with a 5-year center. We're going to have a metric for understanding as a nation and as a committee, okay, what is the array of vessels, surface and subsurface, that essentially gives us the capacity that we wanted when we said 355, or just gives us the right capacity? What's your, kind of advice to us on this, and how far along do you think the Navy is in trying to, develop the plan that would be shared with us on the mix of crewed and uncrewed going forward? It's crewed, uncrewed, surface, and sub. And 10 years ago, we weren't so focused on the Indo-PACOM as the center of everything like the way we are now. So there's been a lot of change. How is the Navy addressing this question of giving us the capacity we need so that we know the kinds of investments we should be making in the NDAA or in appropriations bills?
Senator, the Secretary of the Navy, the CNO, and the VCNO have been having that very discussion about how do we present to you, the Congress, the measure of our naval power. The number of ships that you have provided and maintained is the easy button, as it were. But our ships are not all the same, nor do they need to be. And so we have aircraft carriers with incredible sortie generation rates. We have ballistic missile submarines with their exquisite strategic deterrence capability. We have multi-mission guided missile destroyers. And we will have medium USVs and frigates that will be much more focused in their mission. And so while I believe we will continue to tell you the numbers, because the global reach and the presence requirement for the Navy under the NDAA will require us to have a large Navy, we are working right now to build a new metric for combat power. And we are struggling with that, and we recognize that we owe it to you.
Ms. Gessler, do you want to add anything to that? I mean, it's really important that you give that to us, because I'll tell you kind of a reality that's like, an object at rest will stay at rest, If we don't get that, then I would like to see more ships built in Virginia, and my colleague here would like to see more, in Connecticut. And we all have our own equities that, absent a compelling case, like, okay, the balance needs to be different, we got to recalibrate it, we will continue to push what we have been doing. And that might not be the right answer. And so we really need kind of a compelling case that factors in these new technologies, these innovative technologies, that factors in, if it's a 5-year center, you're assuming it's a 5-year center not only because it's more disposable, that's the wrong word, but also that the innovation may happen so fast that it would be kind of obsolete after 5 years. So we need to have a compelling case so that we can make the right investment decisions rather than just fall back on the default and argue for our parochial priorities. And I'm not saying this as a criticism. I think it's an amazing opportunity, but it's going to take some real explanation to us so that we can get all of our colleagues on board.
If I may, I think one of the things that was introduced in the fighting instructions was the hedge force, the tailored offsets, and then the combination of those into the tailored force packages. So as we look across the threat set and we determine whether it is the main battle force that would take on that threat, or whether it is a tailored offset and what those offsets need to be, that will drive the mix of systems that we need to procure. And so to your point, is it a number or is it the capability that we need at the time? Mm-hmm. And so as we will always have the main battle force and the general purpose force, and that will be a certain number, that is driven by the threat. What we need to be able to do faster, and to the point, maybe the vessels end up lasting longer than 5 years, but the payloads probably don't, because or what's inside the payloads, right? Certain munitions, certain threats, certain EW capability, that has to evolve at the speed of the threat, at the speed of software. And so I think that is what we have to figure out. How do we measure the tailored offsets and the hedge forces that we need when we need them?
If I could keep going just for a second. I will tell you that from a Navy perspective, there's no intention to stop shipbuilding of our large multi-mission or even focus mission like SSBN warships. We have an opportunity to involve more shipbuilders and to have more of the United States involved in the shipbuilding industrial base so that we can add MUSVs and frigates and other small vessels into our fleet without taking away from the attention that the large established shipbuilders, the focus that they're dedicating to building destroyers and submarines and aircraft carriers.
Well, and let me just say one thing, if I could add one more. And the chair will be surprised because he doesn't hear me do a lot of compliments to the administration. This is an area where I'm very complimentary